What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. We've got Anthony Joshua, 23-1 with 21 knockouts, defending his WBA, IBF, and WBO heavyweight titles against Kubrat Pulev, 28-1 with 14 knockouts. Pulev is Joshua's IBF mandatory challenger, and this fight is taking place on December 12, 2020 at the O2 Arena in London. It's weird how so many people are kind of rolling their eyes at this one, as if it's a foregone conclusion that AJ's just going to clean him up. Most people are already matching Fury and AJ up in their head as if that clash is inevitable, totally overlooking Joshua's immediate workload. Guys, didn't we just make this mistake with AJ's first fight versus Andy Ruiz? Kubrat Pulev has lost only one fight in his career, and it was against a near-prime Wladimir Klitschko, in a fight where Klitschko was forced to get uncharacteristically aggressive and risk-taking. Pulev hurts Klitschko early in that fight, actually wobbling Wladimir by walking him into a jab. Go ahead and check that one out. It happens like in the first 20 seconds of the first round. Online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer also points that out a lot. Pulev hits Klitschko with the jab, and it wobbles Klitschko. Pulev then starts fighting him very authoritatively. And Klitschko versus Pulev is well into Wladimir Klitschko's dominant reign as heavyweight champion. So Klitschko's looking spooked and a little shook up early against Pulev, although his leg buckle was subtle enough to where a lot of the viewing audience and even the broadcast missed the fact that Klitschko did get buzzed by that jab. So Pulev hurts Klitschko with the jab early. They start clinching and start whacking each other within the clinch, especially Pulev. Ref is breaking them up. There's a lot of like rabbit punching, a lot of like near headbutts, because they're kind of lunging into each other at this point. They separate. Klitschko then launches a lead left hook. Boom! Drops Pulev. And remember, Klitschko is normally cautious, but here he instead leads with that beautiful left hook. Pulev goes down, but gets up, looks badly wobbled. He gets dropped again, this time with a grazing shot. This round is electrifying, a lot of action. Look at the amount of times, though, that Klitschko is forced to jump in and grab Pulev. Klitschko didn't seem to want to hang around at mid-range, but when he's launching these uncharacteristic ambush attacks on Pulev, he's often catching them and dropping them. He drops him again in the third round. And Pulev eventually gets stopped in the fifth. Spectacular knockout win for Wladimir Klitschko. But the fight was very interesting in that it got very uncomfortable very quickly. There was a lot of clinching, like I said, a lot of near head clashes, a lot of rabbit punching. And Klitschko chooses to fight this fight very aggressively. Now, we just saw in Anthony Joshua, a young undefeated champ, go from knocking all of his opponents out up until Joseph Parker to losing his belts to big underdog Andy Ruiz via TKO in a fight where AJ was dropped 4 times. To AJ then agreeing to an immediate rematch with Ruiz in a fight where, and some of y'all might have forgotten this, many advised AJ not to take that immediate rematch. This was risky business. This could have been a career devastator if he lost that second fight to Andy Ruiz. Imagine if Dylan White loses to Alexander Povetkin again. Only this is Anthony Joshua, one of the biggest stars in the sport. It was actually a little like Wilder in this current Tyson Fury scenario, where if Wilder doubles down, or in this case triples down, and fights a third fight with Fury, what a loss to Fury would do to Wilder at this point. Now, what makes that one different is that Tyson Fury is the lineal heavyweight champ and is now viewed as the #1 heavyweight in the sport. Andy Ruiz wasn't and isn't. But Andy Ruiz, to those in the know, when he was announced as Gerald Big Baby Miller's replacement as AJ's opponent for his USA debut, was a serious opponent who simply didn't look the part. Remember, Big Baby Miller was originally picked largely because this fight was taking place in Madison Square Garden, and Big Baby Miller is from Brooklyn, New York. But Andy Ruiz, credentials-wise, was a more credible opponent than the guy he was replacing. Ruiz had only lost a decision to Joseph Parker for the vacant WBO belt, and that fight was nearly even. So AJ is coming into this Ruiz fight looking to make a splash in the US. AJ, by the way, had earned his first belt, the IBF, by defeating Charles Martin. He then added the vacant WBA title in that showdown with Wladimir Klitschko, dramatic TKO win for AJ. Then he won the WBO belt from Joseph Parker via decision in one of the weirder officiated and poorly judged fights that I've seen in recent heavyweight history. I've never seen that ref before, and I'm not sure I've seen him since. But it was actually Joshua's TKO win over Alexander Povetkin that I was most impressed with. I believe this was Joshua's DAZN debut just after the Joseph Parker fight. I know that I had just subscribed to DAZN on the day of the fight. Povetkin, who you might remember, just scored what I consider to be the knockout of the year versus Dillian Whyte, another former victim of AJ. Povetkin has big power, had only lost once to Wladimir Klitschko at the time. Povetkin was an Olympic gold medalist, like Joshua, like Wladimir, and Povetkin, quite frankly, was giving AJ all he could handle early in their fight. AJ was still holding his own, but he was struggling with managing Povetkin's sudden entry points, which usually involve at least one crushing right-hand attempt. Well, AJ got bloodied up a bit by the aging but talented and dangerous underdog and then turned it around, caught Povetkin with a couple short, hard shots and punished him before the fight was stopped in the 7th. Great adjustment, great win for AJ, one of his top 3 wins in my book. And it was after that where AJ lost shockingly to Andy Ruiz in the upset of the year. Then returns with a must-win rematch scenario versus Ruiz and wins that one via decision versus a clearly out-of-shape Ruiz who didn't take his training seriously. One of the more confusing and frustrating performances that I've seen from an elite fighter, and it happened on the biggest stage of Ruiz's career. Now, Joshua won this fight, but it was through a very stick-and-move-based, defensive-minded style. Far from the patient assassin that AJ normally is. He fought this fight from behind a jab, and he didn't appear interested to get caught up in any close-range firefight like he did in their first fight. He fought this fight very cautiously and did what he had to do to score a lopsided decision win. So AJ won his 3 belts back, and Ruiz hasn't been in the ring since. Although he strangely fired his longtime trainer Manny Robles and is now working, I believe, with the Reynosos, with Canelo's people. Well, I look at this Joshua versus Pulev fight as being an opportunity for Joshua to earn some of that reputation back of being a knockout artist with enormous power. This obviously did not come across in that rematch with Andy Ruiz. Now, Pulev, as I mentioned, has only lost to Wladimir Klitschko and has now beaten guys like Tony Thompson, Alexander Dimitrenko, Derek Chisora, who we just saw lose that close decision to Alexander Usyk. Pulev has beaten an old Sam Peter and Hughie Fury, Tyson Fury's brother, who fought a solid decision loss versus Joseph Parker and another one to Povetkin. So Pulev is serious business, but he's now 39 years old and hasn't fought in just over a year. While I do think he could win a couple of the early to middle rounds versus Joshua, and Joshua is going to have to account for that elite jab of Pulev's, Pulev probably won't fight a full 12 rounds versus AJ without getting rocked badly at some point. Because AJ, like Wladimir, has a two-handed attack. His left hook and straight right are probably equally powerful. AJ's got a nice offensive arsenal. He dropped Ruiz in that 3rd round of their first fight with a beautiful left hook. He rocked Klitschko with an uppercut. He hurt Povetkin with a short, straight right hand. And you mean to tell me that a 39-year-old will be able to go a full 12 with AJ without getting put on the canvas? AJ is one of the 2 best fighters that Pulev's faced, and the other is Wladimir Klitschko. And that was 6 years ago. Simply put, I don't see how Pulev avoids AJ's power. That jab will make things a little interesting early, but if Pulev does have success with it, then it'll force AJ, like Wladimir, to start leading with power shots. I think the most likely scenario is that AJ wins, but not only does he win, that he wins via knockout, mid to late round. AJ's coming off of an unspectacular but very necessary win versus Andy Ruiz, and he's got to want some of that knockout mojo back. And what better way to carry momentum into a title unifying showdown versus Tyson Fury than with a knockout over a very durable and a top 10-ish ranked Kubrat Pulev. Even if Pulev was 5 years younger, I'd still favor AJ. But versus a nearly 40-year-old Pulev who needs to make this fight dirty and uncomfortable as he did versus Wladimir, which did end up costing him. He woke up a sleeping giant in that case. But he'll need to use some of that jab, power punch, clinch, rabbit punch, some of those tactics versus Joshua here. But I'm taking Anthony Joshua to win via mid-round. I won't even say late round. I'll say mid-round, meaning 5th round to the 8th round stoppage. Although this fight is more interesting than advertised, especially if you look at the odds. I think I saw AJ up at like a minus 1,200, and a Pulev might have been like a plus 600 to 800, something like that. But I just think Pulev's window of opportunity at the elite level has closed at 40. Although we just saw 41-year-old Povetkin knock 32-year-old Dylan White out cold a few months ago. Granted, Pulev doesn't have Povetkin's one-punch knockout power. But then again, AJ also hasn't had a tough scrap since his loss to Ruiz in their first fight. Again, Ruiz looked terrible in their rematch. Very unprofessional. But let me know your thoughts on Joshua versus Pulev. Do you see this as simply a stay busy fight for Joshua? Because I don't. Also, how do you think Anthony Joshua fares versus the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury? By the way, I know Deontay Wilder has had a huge fall from grace, not only with the loss to Tyson Fury, but with everything that he said and done since the loss to Tyson Fury in their rematch. But what a bummer that we never got to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder when they were both undefeated champs just a couple of years ago. Huge missed opportunity. That would have been a lot of fun. But please, leave your comments in the comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.